And for instance, in America, we know that the homeless population is characterized by two factors. One is substance abuse, alcohol or drugs, and the other one is isolation. No connection with family, no connection with friends. It is absolutely and shockingly destructive.
Hello, everyone. I am Rabbi Rami Goldberg, and this is another episode of Biblical Money. I am here with my mentor, even though we've only spoken a couple of times, but really mentor and the inspiration for this whole project, Rabbi Daniel Lapin, who has written many books on the topics of business and the Bible, money and finance, and really is everything that I try to do has been trying to model that which you have been teaching. So I'd really like to publicly say thank you to all the work that you have done, and looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored, and I've been looking forward to this too. I'm so happy we could make it happen.
Excellent. So I think one of the most revolutionary things that comes up in the book is that business is moral. Okay, this is and it's a theme that you have, and I've heard you speak about it, and many times people think business is not, like, make the case for me that business is actually a moral thing. We see so many people involved in corruption and crime and doing all sorts of bad things, terrible CEOs who are dumping toxins in the lakes and all sorts of other things. So how is it that you seem to not take that approach?
Well, it's certainly very common. Just last week, somebody from the Jewish community in Lakewood was talking to me about somebody, and he said, they are such nice people. I'm really happy I met them. They're lovely people in spite of the fact that they're very wealthy. And that really captures the idea that poverty equals virtue is a very destructive falsehood. And if you're interested a little further on, I'll be happy to tell you where it comes from. But it may be a sad part of Jewish culture. It is absolutely not a part of Jewish values. And so the idea is that business is making money. That's what we're talking about. And part of the problem is that people do not have a clear understanding of the economics involved. And so one of the questions that I ask Rabbi Rami very often is, how can you get money? How many different ways do you know of getting money?
Find it, steal it, work for it.
If you find it or you win the lottery, all right, let's
assuming the lottery is a moral thing also, but that's a discussion for another time.
Winning the lottery is a real problem because Hebrew and English are among the very few languages in the world that distinguish between obtaining money and earning money. In Spanish and French and Italian, it's l'argent dinero. It could be the lottery. It could be you worked hard all your life and accumulated money. It makes no difference. In Hebrew, there's a huge difference. And let's not even go into lottery questions now because that's another whole topic. But it does have serious moral implications. Essentially, it's the whole reason why in ancient Jewish wisdom, anybody who lives on his gambling winnings is disqualified for a number of Jewish activities, including giving testimony in a court of law. And so we won't talk about that. But basically, things you can do, in terms of things you can do, you can hold up your local convenience store or your local bank with a .357 Magnum revolver, and you'll find that they are actually very eager to give you their money. And the only other way of doing it is to have somebody voluntarily reach into his pocket or his bank account and give you money. And the only reason somebody would consensually agree to do that is if whatever you're giving him in exchange for his money is worth more to him. whether the thing you're selling him or the service you are providing to him. So when I get out of an Uber and my software automatically transfers money to the driver, I'm very happy. I have transferred money out of my bank account into his, and I'm really happy because he provided a valuable service for me, which was worth for me much more than the few dollars that it cost me. So great deal. Very happy with that. So important then to understand that in a Jewish way of thinking, the money is not the quest. The money is the consequence. The quest is to serve other people, and the source of that quest is to overcome the existential problem of human isolation. And so that's why we have in the second chapter of Bereshit, in the second chapter of Genesis, it's not good for man to be alone. Now, after 8 statements of good, the last of which was gold, notably, we now have God saying something is not good. And what is not good? For man to be alone. This expression, it's not good, appears only twice in the 5 books of Moses. The second case is really interesting, and you probably know where it is. It's where Moses' father-in-law, Yitro, says to Moses, it's not good that you keep the people waiting. And the observation there again is that Yitro is bothered by the fact that they are detained from going about their ordinary business with their families and with their associates. And so he says it's not good. So it's interesting. Both cases, the only cases of it's not good, are in dealing with this existential problem of human loneliness. And God responds with 2 solutions. One is fairly quick, and another one comes a few verses later in chapter 3. In chapter 2, the statement, it's not good for man to be alone, a lot of people mistakenly assume that this applies specifically to Adam's matrimonial prospects. But that's only a subset of the broader statement. God's statement here is a defining statement of universal application, which is it is never good for any people to be isolated and alone. And for instance, in America, we know that the homeless population is characterized by 2 factors. One is substance abuse, alcohol or drugs, and the other one is isolation. No connection with family, no connection with friends. It is absolutely and shockingly destructive. And this is why it is that solitary confinement, you might have thought, was a reward for busy people. Yeah, please, give me 10 days in a room by myself with my library and I'll be, no, actually you'll go nuts. Solitary confinement is a torture because it contributes to the dismantling and the deterioration of your psyche. We know others and we know ourselves. Our own identities are clarified by our association with other people. And that's why Adam, for the first time, identifies himself as Ish only once his wife is introduced to him soon after these verses. So we very much depend on interaction with other people for our sense of psychic health. I don't doubt that the so-called epidemic of mental health in the United States has a lot to do with isolation and a lot to do with the fact that people have replaced genuine human interaction with interaction on social media, which is hugely problematic. But regardless, God says, okay, not good for man to be alone. Okay, what's the solution? The solution is twofold: money and marriage, in the reverse order. Marriage comes a couple of verses later, and so the male-female connection becomes a prototype for human interaction of all kinds. It is the idea of getting to know somebody. So when the Torah says, "And Adam knew his wife, and she conceived," that is obviously talking in an intimate sense. But the implication, of course, is that for all people, there is no joy like getting to know another human being, because in so doing, you are in contact with the infinite. You're in contact with God Himself. And it's really quite a wonderful thing. But that's not all. In His infinite goodness, God gave us yet a second method for defeating existential loneliness, and that is money. And so, getting, as anybody who's studied any of the literature on the subject knows, one of the ways you build your network is by finding ways to do favors for people, to do good for other people. And this is one of the reasons that in the United States, there's quite a popular thing called business development clubs. And you get together the first Tuesday of the month, and everybody exchanges business cards, and everybody says what they do, and everyone meets, and they say, well, I know somebody who might might need your services, but they're never very effective because there's a venal quality to that. I'm here for what I can get. And the essence of business is service. And it's godly, which is one of the reasons that in English and in Hebrew, in English we speak about a worship service, and we speak about customer service. And in Hebrew, of course, we have the word avodah. God put Adam in the Garden of Eden, le'ovda u'leshomra. That means to take care of, to work. And in Exodus chapter 20, we've got the 10 Commandments, and number 4 is sheshet yamim ta'aseh kol melachvecha, sheshet yamim ta'avod v'asita kol. 6 days you must work, and that's the same word for work, avodah. But avodah means taking care of business, looking after your customers, looking after your clients. But then exactly the same word is used in God telling Moses to get ready to take the people out of Egypt. And He says, go to Pharaoh and say, let my people go, that v'ya'avduni, so that they may worship me in the desert. And in the last chapter of the book of Joshua says, basically, he says, you people of Israel can do whatever you like. I'm washing my hands of you. As for me and my family, na'avod et Hashem, we will serve God. And so serving God and serving human beings is very, very closely related, partially because in the same way that we would love to see our children serving one another, we'd love to see our children constantly cooperating. We want to see none of our children bickering with each other and being mean.
It doesn't happen in the Goldberg house. There's no bickering whatsoever.
Exactly. I knew that. And we take great pleasure when we discover that our children have grown out of that phase and now genuinely love each other and care for each other and do each other favors. And it's quite wonderful. I remember when it happened to me for the first time. Thank God the kids were still quite young, and one of them came up and said, told me of something they were doing, and I said, "Oh, I remember. Wasn't I supposed to give you $20 for that?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "But I didn't. I forgot about it. I was busy. I'm so sorry." She said, "It was no problem. Rebecca loaned it to me. Her sibling gave it to her."
Wow.
Okay, and this is great. She said, "I didn't want to disturb you, so I told Rebecca." She said, "No problem." So this idea of God being happy to see us cooperating and serving one another is why we have the word for chanut, for a store, is rooted in the Hebrew word chen. Matzachen be'Noach, matzachen be'enei Hashem. Noah found grace. So what is there to find grace in a store? Well, it may not be in France, and it may be just starting in Israel, but in America, when people finish a transaction in a store, the storekeeper usually says, "Have a nice day." There's something graceful about that. There's something gracious and beautiful about that. And so a store is a place where economic transaction takes place, and it's a place that God smiles on. Shulchan, a table, it means shalchein. It's also a place where do you manifest your financial success? You eat, you get to eat, and that's at a table. That's why when somebody is unfortunately a recipient of charity, the Hebrew term for that is metzaper al shulchan chaveiro, somebody who waits at his friend's table for the crumbs to drop off, as it were. In other words, he's dependent on charity. So, and so this, it's important to see that the act of doing business is actually building friendships. And that's why I love going to weddings, because I keep asking people, so, what brings you here? You're related to the bride, related to the groom? And every now and then I hit on a cousin an uncle. Yeah, and he's my nephew. But most of the time, people answer me by saying, oh, no, we're not related, but the bride's father and I have been partners in business for the last 10 years, that kind of thing. So maybe not good advice to do business with your friends, but you should certainly make friends with the people you do business with, because that whole monetary approach, and where this comes up is where God says, "Bezeat apecha tochal lechem," by the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. And bread is a metaphor for money, which is why even in English and Russian and many other languages, somebody might say, have you got any bread on you? Can you lend me some dough making bread? And so there again, that's not part of the curse. Kotz v'dardar is the curse, but the Midrash explains that Bezeat apecha tochal lechem is God responding to Adam's prayer for atonement, his apology for having violated the very first dietary rule of the Torah.
So in that situation, that Adam is that's like a restitution is the work?
No, he said to God, look, I'm really sorry. I made myself just like my donkey. Just as animals eat whatever they see, I did the same thing. You told me one thing I shouldn't eat. I looked at it, looked nice, I ate it. And I hate this idea because I've now animalized myself. You created us as a distinct and special creature touched by your finger, and now I've gone and ruined it. I've made myself just like an animal. And God said, I accept your apology, and I'm going to give you a beautiful food that is unique to humans, and that's how you will be distinguished. It's one of the ways you'll be distinguished from animals. And this food is called bread. Animals eat vegetables, animals hunt animals, but only human beings are going to be able to defer gratification and cooperate with other people. They're going to plant wheat long before they want to eat bread, and they'll take the wheat to the miller and grind it into flour, and they'll take the flour to the baker who'll turn it into bread. And all of that economic collaboration results in the special food, which is why when we start a meal, we always make a special blessing on the bread. Bread is sacramental. And in many other religions, the same is true. And so whereas my mother, who was a mother to 3 sons, she got used to us throwing blocks of wood at each other. But if we ever threw a bread roll at each other, we found her finger marks on our cheek, because bread is holy. And I think people intuitively understand that. So when we make a blessing, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, although God brings wheat, not bread, and it's our work that turns it into bread, it's our connection with God which makes it all possible. And so, making money is fundamentally a way of serving God's other children, and the money follows as a consequence. And so, really, the Jewish way of starting a business is not how can I get money? It's how can I best serve people. The money will flow automatically.
Once you're thinking in service, from service comes the money is just an outflow of that.
Sure, absolutely.
So do you think that businesses have it wrong today? Meaning, do you think that, overall what you're saying is like kind of like a nice, it's a beautiful idea, and it's the way that we should be thinking about business. But do people intuitively do the Elon Musk and the Bill Gates of the world understand that? fundamentally? Do they understand that it's a spiritual activity, or it's just acquiring and amassing more?
Yeah. So the answer, I think, is probably a little bit of both, but I'll explain why there is an element of this as well. In Lashon HaKodesh, in Hebrew, there is no word for retire. We don't have the concept of retirement. Why? What's wrong with? Why shouldn't we? Moses worked till his last day. Why do we not like the word retirement? Why don't we like the concept? And the answer is that retirement implies that my entire economic enterprise was selfish. Now that I've got enough, I don't care about you. And so, I've been going to the same doctor for 15 years. The guy knows me. I like him. He tolerates my eccentricities. And one day I walk into his office and I see him in short pants and a polo shirt, and he's playing around with a golf ball and a putter on his carpet. And I say, I know I didn't make an appointment, but as usual, I usually feel okay dropping in. There was nobody in the waiting room, so I'm lucky. I can just come in and see you right away. He said, oh no. He said, I'm not seeing you. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm going to play golf now. I'm retired. When? So what are you talking about? He says, as of Monday. I said, how dare you? What sort of human being are you? God gives you full health and your strength, and you've been taking care not only of me, but hundreds of other people I know, and all of a sudden you're done with me. I thought you cared about me, but you obviously don't. Now that you've got enough money to play for the rest of your life, you don't need us. What a terrible human being you are.
What was his response?
No, this didn't really happen. I'm giving you an example. No, if it did, I would have said that, but it's not happened yet. But that, in other words, it has an enormous impact on how you live your life, whether you're just doing it till you can retire, or whether you love what you're doing, no matter how menial it might be, because it's serving other people. Now, there are different ways of articulating that, but you ask about Gates or Musk or Bezos or anybody else. I would say that they do feel that, otherwise they wouldn't be working. They certainly don't need the money. And so I think there is something exciting. And successful high-tech startups, and I've spoken to a lot of these guys, I've given seminars for them, and they'll tell me over and over again, I never got into this for the money. It was just so exciting to be able to come up with a way of giving people a means of calling a cab. He said, and so he may not have said, I want to serve God's other children, but it wasn't about the money. It was about coming up with a way of serving other people. And I don't doubt that it is, without question, the key to successful entrepreneurial activity.
Meaning, not if you're chasing the money, that's a different. You're
going to make all kinds of mistakes, and it's going to come when you speak to investors. It'll become apparent. But if you truly are excited at bringing new value to the world, which is just another way of saying serving other people, it just will work differently. And it does.
And you've also written that money is fundamentally a spiritual activity. And I guess that kind of ties into all this. That if I'm doing something that is in service of other people, then what I get from that is not something that's physical, but it's something spiritual as well. Is that correct, or is that to sharpen that point?
People. Even in the traditional Jewish world, there is a bit of a tendency to dismiss money as gashmiut. Oh, nobody pays any attention to it.
Physicality.
Nobody cares. Sorry.
Physicality. I've just translated gashmiut
as and among many of the Christian organizations that I serve and many of the churches, I've found the same thing. And by the way, when I walk into a church to when I walk and arrive at a church for the very first time to give a speech, and I know right away if this is a church that is bought into the false equation that virtue and poverty are the same thing. I see the maintenance is neglected. There's a light bulb out. There's grass growing through the cracks in the parking lot, and I can tell. And I go in. I see the pastor's wife has a strained look on her face. and they're all having tough money times, and so the membership as well. And I love working with them, and I've had the great pleasure of coming back, after a year of programs, getting them, because in the final analysis, if you view an activity as morally reprehensible, you'll never be able to be good at it. And so I love going back to these places and finding how they've changed, and how money is all of a sudden not the problem that it was there the first time. So no, the thing is that when we use the word spiritual, we're not conflating it with godly or moral or virtuous or pious. Spiritual just means something that cannot be measured in a lab. Religious means religious, pious means pious, godly means godly. But spiritual means, now, one subset of spirituality is God and religion, of course. But there are many other parts of things that are spiritual. Gratitude is spiritual. Empathy is spiritual. Optimism. If there was a way, if you had a way of measuring people's optimism, you would be a millionaire before the summer. Because if there's one attribute that every insurance company wants to be able to measure in the people it hires as insurance agents, it's optimism. As a matter of fact, every sales organization wants to only hire optimists. They have no way of measuring it, because optimism is a spiritual quality. And every HR department in the world would buy your program from you. There is no way to do it. We cannot measure optimism. We can't measure loyalty. All of these things. And so you say, well, wait a sec, we can measure money. Well, not really. There is no physical way to explain why 10 dimes equals one paper dollar. That makes no sense. It's only by virtue of human agreement that that statement is true. But there's no machine that will show you that 10 dimes equals $1. Now, you can program a vending machine to do that, of course, but it's still not giving you any true measure of the value. So, for instance, if Grandpa hid $5,000 in a can or a jar in 1945, and we now find it. You know what $5,000 buys you in America today? A few dozen eggs, basically. It's with the price of eggs, But when Grandpa put it away, he meant that so you could buy a car, because
a house,
in 45, sorry,
or a house,
or even, yes, a house even. So now, so what's happened? So the money looks the same. It's still 50 pieces of green paper with the number 100 on each one. But what's changed? Well, because it's a spiritual phenomenon, there is no way of locking it in. It does depend on other factors, just like reputation. Right? Somebody's reputation is spiritual. It can be damaged, and it can even be damaged by somebody who doesn't even know you. But yeah, the problem is that as soon as you think money is physical, you have a huge challenge here. Again, having to do with your own perception of the morality of the enterprise. The huge problem is this, Rabbi Rami. Anything that is physical can only be in one place at any given time. Or to put it in more technical terms, it can only occupy one point on the space-time continuum. So that means that this phone of mine, with my name on it, if I have it here in front of me, and imagine we were in the same room, and I turn away, when I turn back, it's on your table in front of you. Well, you up one phone, but I'm down one phone. You follow? And so there is there is only a finite asset value to that thing. And that thing was with me, and now it's with you. You have it, I don't have it. And the fact that you have it means I'm phoneless. With spiritual things, that's not true. With anything physical, that's true. A book, and if that's your understanding of money, which was essentially one of the one of many wrong-headed ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. If money is physical, then if I've got a few of those things in my bank account, I must have caused a whole bunch of other people to have less. Obviously, because that's a basic law of physics. If it's a physical object, if I've got it, there are other people who don't. That's all, as I demonstrated with my phone. Now, that is a very good reason for a decent person not to embark on the money-making adventure. But you see, that's the big difference between taking money and making money. Since money is spiritual, it's completely different. So, for instance, take a saxophone. Saxophone is a musical instrument, physical or spiritual. Well, it's physical. I can measure it. I can measure its weight. I can measure its length. I can even measure the frequency of the music it plays. But how about a tune? A tune is spiritual.
Can't grab it out of the air, you know?
That's exactly right. So if I've got a tune and you learn it from me and you walk away whistling that tune, you've taken nothing from me. But if you walk away with my phone, you've taken something away from me. If you walk away with my saxophone, you've taken something away from me. If you walk away with my nigun, with my tune, you've taken nothing from me. You're just making the world a more musical place. So there's a huge difference. That's why it's very well worth just determining whether money is spiritual or physical. Because if it's physical, to tell you the truth, I'm not interested in being involved with it. I don't want to take it from other people, which is one of the problems with gambling, of course. But if money is spiritual, then I don't take anything from anybody. And so you can see, for instance, that if I do a transaction with somebody, let's say I bought a pair of shoes at a store, and now I've got a pair of sneakers with lights that flash when you walk, which I wanted for a long time. And let's say
they probably go well with the suit.
It'll go well with almost anything. And so let's say I bought it for $20, just for argument's sake. And now, if somebody comes to me, basically what I want to look at, Rabbi Rami, is my financial statement. I want to look at my P&L and my assets and liabilities based on this transaction. I gave away $20 and I received a pair of shoes. Now, we'll have to engage in a thought experiment to figure out what has happened to my net worth. And it's a very plausible and compelling thought experiment. You come up to me and say, Lapin, I'd like to buy those nice shoes you got for $20. What am I going to say?
Depends on if you want them.
It makes no sense. I want the pair of shoes. Why on earth would I give them up to be exactly where I was half an hour ago? And so you'll say, okay, fine, I'll give you $30. I think to myself, this is beginning to be interesting. 50% profit in half an hour. This is fairly Jewish. I can get into that. But I think to myself, you know what? It's still nuisance. Maybe he hasn't got another pair in my size. I don't know. I'm not. And you say, how about $35? And I say, okay, good. He's coming close to his limit. And I say to you, you know what? For $40, you're going to have the shoes. Now, you may not want the shoes, but I've now proven what the value of my shoes are in my asset portfolio. Now, we wouldn't do this in GAAP accounting because GAAP accounting was developed by the Stock Exchange Commission for purposes of accurately being able to measure different companies. But in real terms, the reason I'm happy with my purchase is that the asset value of my portfolio is up by $20. By the sheer act of buying these shoes, I'm richer than I was before. And that's one of the reasons that people love shopping. That's one of the spiritual highs you get from shopping. There's a deep awareness that you are better off than you were before. All right, fine. How about the other guy? Have I ripped off? So if I'm better off, surely the storekeeper is worse off just by the law of balance. So we go to the storekeeper and say to him, listen, would you like us to bring this guy Lapin back? He walked out of here with a pair of your shoes. We'll bring him back. You can get your shoes back into inventory and just give him back the $20. What does the storekeeper say? You're crazy. Why would I do that? Those shoes I bought from the wholesaler for $10. I've just sold them for $20. I get to buy cornflakes for my kids tomorrow. This is wonderful. And the Marxist walks out absolutely baffled. How can two people both be better off after a transaction? And the answer is because the money is spiritual, not physical. That's exactly the point. And this is one of the reasons that God smiles on financial transactions. If they are, not, I don't call paying the IRS tax bill doesn't count because it wasn't consensual. But for any other consensual transaction, God smiles. It's two human beings both making the other person better off than they were before.
Wow, that's great. We have just a few more minutes, and I want to just get into, I have a stack of your books, Business Secrets from the Bible, which I certainly recommend, Thou Shalt Prosper, and there's a new book. I don't know if if it hit stores yet or it's about to.
Yeah, it is. It's called The Holistic You, and it's really the most important one of all of them because it captures the interaction between five crucial parts of our lives, based on the reason that the five books of Moses are five books, not one book, that things break down into five fundamental elements. And in order to live a fulfilling and complete life, you got to have family, you got to have finances, you got to have friends, you got to have physical fitness, health, and you got to have faith. And we chose those words in order to just keep it easy to remember 5 F's, and that's the basis of my whole coaching program. Is that you can't possibly improve your financial situation if you don't know what your marital situation is. And likewise, if you're having marital challenges, one of the very first issues is probably finances. And finances without friends and physical fitness without all of these things interplay with one another. People with a few dollars are usually healthier than people who don't. So all of these things play together, and it's really my most exciting book to date.
Wow! So it really it pulls together. Meaning a lot of the other books, at least the books that I mentioned earlier, are focused on one aspect of that equation, even though they touch on all of these. Yes. Through the various vignettes, but this really hits these points in a much more direct way. So amazing! I'm certainly looking forward to getting a copy and giving it a read. Anyway, so we'll wrap up over here. And Rabbi Lapin, your wisdom is always insightful. Something I really gain a lot from, and I know that you are a sought after speaker. And so anyone who wants to get in touch with you, they can get to your website. Remind me of the link again.
Yeah, it's Rabbi Daniel Lapin, LAPIN.com.
RabbiLapin.com, and they can reach out to you.
RabbiDanielLapin.com.
Rabbi Daniel Lapin. They can reach out to you and get to you to have you come speak at synagogues, churches, and wherever else you gather a crowd to talk about the spirituality of money and then the holistic living. So, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me on your show. It's a terrific show, and I know lots and lots of people love watching regularly, so this is great.
Thank you. I appreciate it.